The Druids are live and it's time to wild shape your way through Baldur's Gate 3. In today's video, we're going to break down the Druid class and I'll teach you everything you need to know about Nature's Guardian. Let's go. This video is sponsored by no one. Let's move on. The Druids are a spell casting class that uses wisdom as their primary stat, so maxing this out during character creation should be your primary focus. Getting it to 16 is the value you want. The key attributes after this are dexterity and constitution, which are both equally important. Dexterity primarily for your armor class when you aren't wild shaped, as well as your initiative, and constitution for your HP and constitution saving throws out of wild shape forms. For races, the best pick will depend on your chosen subclass, which I'll get into each of the subclasses a little bit later. For the Circle of the Moon Druid, focusing on the wild shape ability should be your main focus, and the Gold Dwarf is the best option here for the +1 to Wisdom and the +2 to Constitution. As you will most likely be in melee range if your wild shape does break, having the extra Constitution for HP is valuable. As you don't need Strength and Dexterity, since when you are wild shaped, you do take the Strength, Dexterity and Constitution of your wild shape form. It's just when you aren't wild shaped that you need to worry about these stats. If you're planning to play as a Circle of the Land subclass, which fits more of a utility spellcaster or healing role, the Wood Elf is the best pick here because they get a +2 to Dexterity and still the +1 to Wisdom. The other alternative option would be a Half Elf, as you can put the extra ability score into the Wisdom or Dexterity or Constitution, depending on what you choose here. The Druid class also comes with a lot of proficiencies just from their class, so I wouldn't stress too much about choosing a race that has proficiencies that you're really looking for. When you pick a Druid, you will get some basic cantrips and spell slots to choose from. For cantrips, I recommend Produce Flame, as you can use it not only as a light while you have the spell active, but once you have it active, you can actually throw that fireball at someone with a free action to deal extra damage from ranged. Thorn Whip is also a really valuable attack that does damage and pulls enemies towards you. This should be used as often as possible, as it is a cantrip, doesn't consume spell slots, and you can rip people off high ground, move them in closer to your melee characters, and really control the battlefield with this ability. Shillelagh is also valuable if you are choosing a Moon Druid when you are in melee range. If your wild shape does break, it's a good idea to have this ability active so that your attacks do extra damage using your Wisdom modifier. Spells are more personal preference and dependent on your build, and you can change your spells at any time, so you can play around with anything you like here. Some options that I would suggest, or highly suggest, is Thunder Wave. This is a melee-based ranged AoE attack that does a ton of damage and will kill most enemies, especially in the early goings, immediately. However, it also does a knockback, so you can get enemies away from you without too much difficulty. Healing Word is a bonus action, and it also has range. This is a really valuable heal that you can use in combat. Entangle is perfect to control the battlefield and set up an area where enemies have to move through and pass a strength saving throw. This is a really good idea to protect your flank or stop enemies from coming through a specific direction that you want to bottleneck. For your starting spells, as you level up, you gain more slots and you can really choose different spells later, as well as the level 2 variants that you will get. This is really up to you and how you want to build out your character. I will cover these more in the build guides that I have for both the Moon Druid and the Land Druid, which will be coming out in the next couple of days. In terms of the background, anything that gives you proficiencies in the wisdom skills is what you should be looking for. So animal handling, insight, medicine, perception, and survival. Folk hero or hermit are both really good choices here, though it is really up to how you want to play your character. This also translates to your skill selections, and you should be picking the ones that benefit from wisdom skills. For your attributes, stacking Wisdom to 16 should be the primary focus here regardless of your build, as this is your spellcasting modifier, and other than that, you should be really focusing on Dexterity and Constitution and getting these as high as possible depending on your chosen race. As you play through the early access and level up, you will get to level 4 and you will make the key decision for the Druid at level 2, which is when you choose your subclass between the Circle of the Moon or the Circle of the Land. Regardless of your choice, you will get the Wild Shape ability. The Wild Shape forms in early access are Cat, Raven, Direwolf, Badger, Spider, Polar Bear, and we have also seen a Yak from the Underdark and the Intellect Devourer of the Mind Flayers, though I'm not exactly sure how you get these forms at this current time, although I will have that in my build guides later. player. Each also have their own strengths and weaknesses, their own dexterity, constitution, and strength modifiers. When you take these shapes, you will take those attributes of the creature you have moved into. I would recommend to experiment with these forms and find what works for you, but some good options for combat if you are using wild shape in combat is the spider, the wolf, and the polar bear. If you are choosing the moon druid, you should always be in the polar bear, as they do have the highest amount of hit points. They can goat enemies into attacking them directly, so they can act as your primary tank. For out of combat, the cat will allow you to sneak around where you shouldn't be, and the raven is a great way to get onto high places that you can't normally jump to with the fly ability. You can also use the badger to dig underground and avoid certain traps as well. Now let's cover the differences between the two subclasses. Circle of the Moon. Transformation is no problem for most druids, but those who keep the ways of the moon gain the ability to morph into more powerful, combative wild shapes, like the polar bear, which is specific to this circle. A moon druid main focus is to using this ability during combat and shifting into various animal forms for each combat encounter and using that additional polar bear that they have. This moon druid should be focused on wild shaped in every combat encounter. That is their main focus. Circle of the Land are the keepers of the old faith. These druids gain additional power based on the region and the type of geography they're connected to. Land druids should be your choice if you don't plan to use wild shape primarily. Land druids do gain an extra cantrip at level 2, and they also get an ability which allows them to restore spell slots without the need for long resting, although it's not as powerful as it may seem, as you can just technically long rest wherever you like without any consequence. The Land Druid should be your choice if you are planning to play as a more utility, spell, damage dealer, and healer. This will allow you to stay in your human form, which allows you to cast spells, so you can control the battlefield via this method. In terms of equipment, you can really choose what you like here. Druids do have a lot of proficiencies, and their starting druid leather armor and quarterstaff is kind of all you're going to need, although you should upgrade the armor to a medium piece of armor because druids can wear that as they do have proficiencies. Also, equipping a shield isn't a bad idea. Your equipment isn't super important, especially if you are planning to wild shape, as your dexterity, constitution, and strength is modified by your wild shape form. So you won't be using the armor class based on the armor you're wearing while you are wild shaped. This is mostly important for land druids so that you can tank a bit more hits and you do have a higher armor class. And for some other tips, druids often aren't considered your primary damage dealer, tank, or even healer, but they are such a valuable class in any party because they are flexible enough to participate and do all three. This is what makes a druid so fun to play and so flexible in and out of combat. Out of combat, you do have all of these wild shape abilities that you can use in different forms, so be sure to play around with them, sneak around as the cat, get into places you shouldn't, fly places as the raven, and see what else you can come up with. This is why the druids are added to Baldur's Gate 3 during the early access so early, so that Larian can test these interactions within the game based on the wild shape forms. Also, make sure you wild shape before combat so you're not wasting a turn shifting into your form. Your wild shape creature's health is an extension of your own health. So for the polar bear, they have 30 HP. Once that 30 reaches 0, you will shift back into your human form with your own health pool. So you basically have 2 health pools to use anytime you are in a wild shape form. Also, if you are wild shaping, be mindful of your carry weight, as your strength will change when you change forms. Your carry weight will also change. So if you are using your druid as your main carrier of items, when you do switch to something like a cat, you will have very little strength, so you'll have very little carry weight and you will be over encumbered very quickly. It's a good idea to move those items to someone else that isn't going to be wild shaping throughout the game. If you are looking for more Baldur's Gate 3 content, check out my character creation guide going through the best races and classes for all of the other classes available in the early access. Please follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and on Twitch, where I stream 2 days a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, Australian night times. Hope to see you guys there in the next stream. Thank you for watching this video. My name is Norza, and I hope you have a great day.